Revelation 1070. From the 25th of August 1939. Purpose of the announcements. Teachers in the afterlife realize the Lord's goodness and love, and through them, receive. The Lord's missions primarily aim at a perfect education of the receiver. Therefore, the receiving earthly child must be continuously instructed in all areas in order to be able to pass on what has been commanded to people and to be able to preach the gospel to them. Not only a single person should become learned through these announcements, but the knowledge should be spread and serve an upward development of man. And therefore all forces in the afterlife active in teaching, must cooperate. The teaching forces are at work in a certain order and the announcements are directed according to each earthly child's respective will to receive. The spiritual instruction given, is decided by desire of the child. And therefore an increased love for God and a deepened faith will be rewarded accordingly by announcements, which make the earthly child happy by their depth and wisdom. And if the child strives for the best possible spiritual progress, it will also increase its ability to receive spiritual gifts, and it will not be able to do enough in spiritual work and will always only want to receive. And this will bring about ever higher results. The willing concession of a receptive soul is particularly desired by the teachers on the other side, because it facilitates their teaching activity immensely, since there are fewer obstacles to the mental transmission. Now every announcement has to fulfill the purpose of teaching, as well as to also impart spiritual power, because every gift offered from above is spiritual power in itself, and the earthly child will feel this through an increased will for spiritual work. And therefore also the drive to work for the Lord and to become an industrious worker in His vineyard, becomes greater and greater, and this is of such great importance, because only now the earthly child also uses the received teachings by willingly passing them on and therefore serves according to the divine will. The activity of the teaching beings in the hereafter is so versatile. They must take into account the disposition of the earthly child and exercise the greatest patience if the result of their effort is to be satisfactory and the work of redemption on earth, successful. But if the will of man is good, his power is also great enough, because it is given to him again and again, as long as he continues to desire. And only weakness of will, weakness of faith and slackening of love activity reduce the measure of spiritual gifts. But as long as the earthly child asks for strength and grace, he will also not slacken in his striving and therefore be allowed to draw wisdom upon wisdom, because the teachers in the beyond are only always ready to give in their love activity and only need the will of man for this. The light beings communicate themselves to people to such an extent that their gifts are truly enough to be knowledgeable in the shortest time, but it must be constantly observed that the spiritual task of the receiver does not remain unnoticed. He who receives much, should also give much, and only the willingness to distribute the gifts he receives, enables the earthly child to receive them again and again. It can thus draw from the source of divine wisdom as long as it also conveys the drink to others who are thirsty, and thus the Father will also always and constantly quench the thirst, because the earthly child desires spiritual gifts not for itself, but also for the fellow human beings. And thus expresses the will to likewise be active on earth in teaching. Amen.